Good evening and welcome to Newsmaker Live. Thank you very much for joining us for this program. One day after Tropical Storm Chantal hit us, but not too badly. To discuss this issue, well, Tropical Storm Chantal, let's not go there. You know, she'll put me in my place immediately. And disaster preparedness in general is the director of the National Emergency Management Organization. She has not been here for a little while. Dawn French. Dawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me back to your
Yes.
listeners and viewers.
It's always good to have you because we always have some good dialogue when we come here. We're going to talk about that, disaster preparedness. We're also going to talk about some of your publications, and you can see some in your background as well on display. So let's talk about Chantal first. And this storm, I mean, now that it has passed, we can all smile and say, oh, that was nothing, just a little bit of wind, a little rain and stuff. But what were the concerns that we had for Chantal coming in?
Well, some of us can exhale, but I think the people in Millet, and you ran a story tonight of the lady in Chazelle, are still holding their breath. They don't dare exhale yet. And that's what we were afraid of landslides and flooding, because the information we had at the time when the storm was approaching, and it was so eerily similar to Hurricane Thomas, that it was moving very fast, and that the information we had was for average 2 to 4 inches of rain with a possibility of 6 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain in a short period of time, and so we were very concerned for flooding and landslides.
But that's nothing compared to Thomas, though.
No, nothing compared to Thomas, but having had Thomas, if Chantal had produced what we were expecting, it would have been worse, because Thomas would have laid a foundation for what Chantal would have then finished off.
Because we are not fully recovered from Thomas.
No,
so
we are not.
Just before we get into Chantal in depth, I mean, what is the situation on the ground as far as the aftermath of Thomas, the infrastructure, the ability of the land to sustain any amount of water and that kind of thing?
You have to understand that when we look at disaster management, we look at phases. And so when a disaster actually happens, the response mechanism activates immediately to deal with the immediate needs of people in shelters, their food, search and rescue, the immediacy of the disaster. And then as you move into what we call the recovery and reconstruction phase, it moves out of what we generically call the National Disaster Office, for us is NEMO, would then go on to another agency for more long-term planning. And in the past, it has usually been the Ministry of Planning. But because of the severity of Hurricane Thomas, the government actually put up a reconstruction unit that still exists right now. And a lot of the projects are being handled by that unit. So between them and the Ministry of Infrastructure, a lot of the projects are being taken care of in terms of looking at the roads, looking at housing, looking at bridges. That is all being dealt by a different department to NEMO.
But that is not complete as yet.
No, and you can see that for yourself. You drive Castries to Vieux-Fort, and you can still see that there's some places along the main road that need work, and there are places in Fort Saint-Jacques that still needs work. So many people asked me soon after Hurricane Thomas how long they thought it would take to get back, and I said 5 years, and many people were surprised by that. But that's what it takes. It takes years to get you back to what you were, much less to be better than what you were.
And you're talking about the main infrastructure, not those outlying areas or the
but we haven't even touched on the outlying
exactly.
areas. It's just the main roads at the moment. So, and then apart from the fact that the country the physically is brittle, I mean, there's some places that I joke and say the landscape still seems to be in shock, because there's some places the grass hasn't dared grow back after all this time. So you can imagine what the emotional state of people are that actually went through what happened in Soufrière and the Bexon area.
And just imagine that, you know, Thomas, the third anniversary will be in a couple of months from now. We're in July, it's in October, so in 3 months.
Yes.
Yeah, in 3 months' time we'll have the anniversary of Hurricane Thomas, and it does not seem like so much time has passed since the hurricane, but time flies.
It does.
Yeah, and I mean, the predictions right now are for a very busy hurricane season. This is the third named storm for the season, Chantal. It passed very close to us, Did it actually pass over St. Lucia? Because from
I'm
what
not
I
a
tracked,
Met office, but exactly from what I tracked, I think it just scraped us because
Right.
at 11 o'clock it was 14.4 degrees north, and St. Lucia is 14.1 degrees north. So it passed the eye, because that's what you're tracking.
Right,
the eye
right.
passed very, very close, and again, we were even if what happened, we were virtually spared when you compare Martinique and Dominica, because the dynamic of a storm, the worst section of the storm is the northeastern quadrant. So we were south of Chatal. Had Chatal passed between St. Lucia and St. Vincent,
right,
the effects would have been a lot worse.
because of
The way it moves,
circulation,
yes, the circulation
of
and the way it moves, yes. So now it's tracking towards Hispaniola. So we're looking at Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba. They all Turks and Caicos indicated that they had gone on tropical storm watch. So even as we breathe a sigh of relief, the regional system for disaster management is still on high alert because we have sister islands who are now in the path of this system.
Well, I was listening to some news from the U.S. earlier today before I came here, and they indicated that it had been downgraded to a tropical wave. So from a tropical storm now it's a tropical wave. Is that actually correct?
But what can happen is that it can strengthen again.
Right.
That's what we have to understand when we're dealing with nature. It waxes and wanes. For Hurricane Thomas, for example, when Hurricane Thomas arrived in Barbados, it was a tropical storm. It left Barbados as a tropical storm and arrived in St. Lucia as a hurricane. So it left. So Chatal is leaving St. Lucia as a tropical storm. It's now a wave. We don't know what it's going to be when it arrives on the northern islands. If is it going to be a tropical storm again? Is it going to be a depression? Is it going to be a Category 4 hurricane? Nobody knows what it's going to do until it actually does it.
Now we were expecting, as you said, between 2 to 4 inches of rainfall and as many as 6 inches. Obviously, we didn't get that, thank God. What happened in that weather pattern that spared us? What I mean, it might be an odd question to ask.
Do you want this week's lotto numbers too?
Well, if you have those, then I'll start playing
well,
the lotto.
first of all, Clinton, I'm not a Met officer, so I really, from a scientific perspective, would not be able to answer that question. But also, I really don't know why the storm didn't do what it did. All I'm telling you is that I'm very grateful that it did not do what it could have done.
Now, some nuts, probably like me, would get excited when they hear storms and stuff because of the news value and that kind of thing. I remember waking up around 2 o'clock Tuesday morning.
A lot of people.
Yeah, because of the wind, and there is this tree outside my window, and I saw it going left and right and blowing. I was like, my wife was like, "Oh, Chatal is here." And I said, "But let's check the time. Check the time. It's 2 o'clock." He said, no, it's supposed to hit around
the frontal edge
between 8
of
and
it
11.
was expected for 2 o'clock.
Oh, for 2 o'clock, okay.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's a lot, including myself. I know people that their biological clock alarmed at 2 o'clock.
Oh.
And yes, we had.
So you're one of those
I was
nuts
one of those. I barely slept because you're maintaining contact with CDMA throughout the night. You're maintaining contact with the other disaster coordinators because we were in contact. Well, I mean, virtually all of us talking Trinidad, St. Vincent, Grenada. Grenada was actually monitoring the chat that was going on. We were monitoring what's happening. So you were, particularly when it came to the relationship between St. Lucia and Barbados, because Barbados would get the effects definitely before us, we were getting a picture from Barbados as to what to kind of expect. And so they were telling us, they're getting the rains. And even before Chatal began to affect St. Lucia, Dominica was already reporting that they were getting rain. They had a report of a roof, a sheet of galvanized of a roof of some building. So you were getting that kind of feedback, which is why I know that, for example, Turks and Caicos, they've had their pre-strike meeting already, so as Jamaica. So you get that feedback, but as I said, we're all on standby, because if there is for example, for the earthquake for Haiti, I went into Haiti as part of the CDMA mechanism. I have deployed into other countries already. In St. Lucia, we have a small team that has agreed for this year that will deploy into another island if it's needed. So that team is just waiting to hear if they're needed for Chatal. So we may have been spared, but the disaster system in St. Lucia has not shut down because St. Lucia has been spared. We're still on our P's and Q's because we may have to go into Haiti, we may have to go into Jamaica. We don't know what Chatal will do.
Now tell me what kind of mechanism is in place for that to happen?
The regional
yes.
system. What happens every year is that SIDIMA will ask the islands who would be willing to deploy into a country if there's a disaster. And then as the National Disaster Coordinator in the country, you ask your staff and your volunteers who would be willing. This is a purely personal request. No one is pressured because you are going into a devastated zone. You are not going for an all-inclusive holiday on your honeymoon kind of conditions. You are going with stone thy pillow, earth thy bed. So we have about 6 people who have agreed that they would go into a country if there was a disaster. They have various skill sets. They can do damage assessment. They are emergency medical technicians. They're search and rescue specialists. So when they agreed that they would go in, I then briefed them on what to expect. And as dramatic as it may sound, Clinton, this is exactly what has happened to me. My phone will ring at any old time. 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the disaster happens and the phone will ring. And SIDIMA will say, Dawn, we have a disaster in so-and-so country, can you go? I will say, well, I need to talk to my PS. I'll get back to you. I am willing to go, but I need to talk to my PS. I will hang up the phone and I'll talk to the cabinet secretary. I will say the earthquake has happened in Haiti and SIDIMA wants to deploy me. He will tell me, okay, you can go. I called SIDIMA back. I said, yes, I have the clearance to go. Within 24 hours, I am gone. I then have to call my deputy when I have a deputy and say, I will not be in office on Monday because I'm going to Haiti in a couple of hours. And when the staff come to work the morning, I'm not there because I have been deployed. It's happened for Ivan in Grenada. It's happened for Ike in Turks and Caicos. It happened for the earthquake in Haiti. So if Chatal gives a serious hit to one of the islands, of course, we're hoping that doesn't happen, that is what will happen. They will get a phone call, say, can you go? You get, because the PS would have given pre-approval to go. So you're just confirming that you can go. And the PS tells you go, and within 24 hours, you're gone. Now
that's regionally, but locally, what do we have? What do we have in place? You know, we had the pre-strike meeting Monday morning.
Well, we have our own protocols to govern us. Every country does. And unfortunately, we've used it very often. We used it for Thomas, we used it for Dean. Any system, so you have what's called the pre-strike meeting, and it means exactly that. Before the system strikes, you have a meeting. And sometimes people misunderstand what the meeting is for. I've had people tell me, oh, now you're calling me to tell me about the storm, and the storm is almost on our doorstep. And I have to correct them and tell them, that's not why I'm calling. The Prime Minister is calling to find out what have you done, because you know the storm is coming, and he wants to know what challenges you have so that we can deal with it ASAP, because you have a gap that you may not have recognized before. And so this is what the meeting is about.
I always have that difficulty, you know, because I'm like, okay, well, we know it's coming. Why meet now? No. Shouldn't everything have been in place
first
before?
of all, you meet, the first thing you hear is from the Met Office, the science of it, the information they have as to that date. The forward speed, the barometric pressure, the forecasted, because they cannot predict what kind of rains and what path, so they can only forecast and give you the models. Based on that, we've had to decide over the years, should school open, should school stay closed, should Carnival, I remember there's been an occasion, can Carnival Monday take place? You know, so there are a number of things.
And that's a tough call, you know, for many people.
That's a tough call, exactly. But no, it's a tough call for you in the meeting, because you may be meeting Saturday night, because the storm is expected to hit Sunday night. And so can Carnival take place Monday? And because you cannot really predict what a storm is going to do, you have to really try and make an educated decision on the science that you have at the moment in time.
And sometimes you just cannot, it cannot be educated, because as you said before, you can never know what to expect. But we were expecting 4 to 6 inches of rain in Chatal, and that never happened.
When Ivan was approaching the region, those of us who were tracking Ivan will know that the model showed Ivan was every time a model came out, it was either Dominica, Martinique, or St. Lucia that was going to get hit. Ivan approached the Caribbean. Ivan was a Category 1. Between two advisories, Ivan strengthened from a 1 to a 4. Now, there are parameters for when we do things. As a storm approaches St. Lucia, it triggers certain actions as it moves closer. But it had not even moved into the zone to trigger action for St. Lucia. But when I realized Ivan had jumped within two advisories from a 1 to a 4, I called the Prime Minister and I say, we cannot wait for it to move into any zone, red zone, green zone, for us to trigger actions. I'm recommending a pre-strike meeting, even though Ivan is all that way away. We went to bed the night expecting Ivan to hit St. Lucia, and when we woke up the morning, Ivan had hit Grenada. This is how unpredictable the storms are.
And Grenada is still recovering from Ivan, and that's
it
very
still have
many
the
years
scars
ago. Yes.
of it. So this is what you are dealing with. Now, for Ivan, we remained active because the office becomes what you call the National Emergency Operations Center. So the staff is complemented by volunteers and certain senior persons within the government system. And because we had activated, we had the pre-strike meeting and we went into 24-hour mode because we expected Ivan to hit St. Lucia. When Ivan hit Grenada, we did not stand down. We stayed active in a 24-hour mode for 2 weeks because we were giving serious support. As you know, everything, the Caribbean emptied itself into Grenada. And we were facilitating the movement of material out of St. Lucia into Grenada through the CDMA mechanism. So even though St. Lucia did not get hit for Ivan, we remained fully cranked up as if St. Lucia had been the one that had been hit.
Now, also, that happened to us for Tomas as well. Between advisories, it moved from I think it was a tropical depression to a hurricane. It never became a storm.
But then what Tomas also did was, Tomas was moving very fast between Barbados and St. Lucia. Before you blink, Tomas was on top of us, and then it stopped. And then as it moved away, St. Lucia is at 14.1 degrees north, 61.1 degrees west. Ivan, why do I keep saying Ivan?
Because you were talking about Ivan a while ago.
Tomas then moved 14 degrees 62, 14 degrees 65, 14 degrees 70. So it was moving away, but it was still kicking us as it moved away because it was moving westward, but it wasn't moving northward.
The outer bands, you know.
So we got a double whammy from Tomas. I got it right this time.
Interesting, yes. You didn't say Ivan. Well, we're speaking here with the director of the National Emergency Management Organization, Don French. We'll take our first break here on Newsmaker Live. When we come back, we'll talk about disaster planning, what you should do, what you should know, and how you should prepare for disasters. Stay with us.